Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out to join us for this webinar around document management. Quick introduction. So my name is Evan Jones. I've been working in accountancy for a number of years. I was an accountant and auditor, and then moved into IT for a large practice. And now I work at Wolters Kluwer, and I'm responsible for all of the non-compliance tools, all those the practice tools that things like document management, practice management, central reporting, workflow, that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to be topping and tailing really around the stuff that Nick's going to present. So Nick, a number of you will already know Nick. Is qualified AAT, and Nick was for ages been doing presentations around our products. But also was in professional services. We were in a team together. Nick's really an expert in demonstrating all of this stuff. So Nick also has a background in practice. So everything that Nick is showing, it's going to be coming from a position of familiarity with the challenges that you have in practice. So quick little bit about document management. So for those of you that already have DM, we're going to give you just some hints and tips, really just to make sure that you're getting the most out of document management and you're using it to the full. For those of you that maybe don't have a document management system, this will just give you some things to consider when you're looking at your options. Now, some of you may have been on our previous webinar. The feedback we had from there was such a huge amount of stuff that we showed in there. Time was really tight. So what we've done is we've taken that webinar, chopped it into two bite-sized chunks. So we've got half hour today and half hour tomorrow. We then got on the back of the one before, we've got a webinar on the 1st of July as well, where we're going to look at the HR aspects of how you could be using document management, because it was clear from the one we did before. I think there was only one person on the call who knew that you could be using this for your own HR system. So, like I said, we'll give you a couple of big things to think about. I'll hand over to Nick, who's going to share some hints and tips and some live demos, and then we'll just finish on things that you can think about to measure value of an electronic system and any Q&A. All right, so things that you should be thinking about. Obviously things are a little bit different at the moment. Everyone's working from home. We've been doing that for a while. The mood seems to be, certainly from the stuff that I've seen around from things like Accounting Web and from some of our other providers that we work with, people who are our partners, there's an increasing trend for people to want to have the flexibility to work from home. So the jury's out as to whether people will be working from home permanently or whether people are going to want to go into the office. Really, it kind of depends on the culture that you have within your business. But from every poll that I've seen and every thought leadership piece that I've read, people want now to have the flexibility to be able to work from home. You know, there was initially a lot of pain experienced by people when they're first being forced to work remotely. People are now getting used to that idea, and actually, rather than refusing to look at things like a document management system or things like tools to manage your workflow and things like that, rather than just ignoring them and saying, well, we don't need those because we always work in the office, what we found is that people really are exploring that a whole lot more, because actually people like having the flexibility of being able to work from home a couple of days a week. Makes it much easier for teams, particularly people who've maybe got other kind of family commitments. So things that you should be thinking about. So adapting how you operate for when you're working at home and for when you're in the office. Now, obviously, if you're in the office, it's very easy to just turn around to the person next to you or shout across the room and ask if someone's got a particular file or an email. Not so easy when you're working from home. So you need to be thinking about how can you increase that visibility of emails and information files across your practice. Also, you want to be making sure that you're maintaining that really good service that you provide to your clients, and making sure that, as far as they're concerned, is completely business as usual for you guys. Other things, of course, to think about if you don't have a DM system, you want to be thinking about potential cost savings, disaster recovery, and also for once you've stored documents, how easy can you retain them or manage the retention? How easily can you get them back? But also document admissibility. So there are many systems which can store documents, but you need to make sure that you've got something which is giving you that full audit trail and the full document versioning and all those kind of things, and that it's completely secure. So working as a distributed team, obviously things that you need to consider, and these are all things which document management can provide for you. You need to make sure that everyone across your practice can get to all of the documents that they're going to need, and that there's only one version of those documents. That everything is held in a central area, that there's a single version of truth around these documents. The worst thing is to have different versions of documents being emailed around and no one knowing what's the right one to be working on. As I've said before, you need to make sure you're quickly able to find and retrieve your documents. There's a single version of them, and that everything is fully audit trailed. So as time is tight, we're deliberately trying to keep this to say 30 minutes and maybe a little bit longer if there are questions. Nick, I'm going to hand over to you, and maybe you can just give a demo and some hints and tips that people can use if they already have DM. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Evan. So what we are going to look at first is really how to get better visibility of, I'd say, emails around visibility of emails between your staff and your clients based on what we've got there. So I'm just trying to share my screen. I think I've got it there. And hopefully what you can see there on my screen is an example of my document management system that I've got set up for one particular client, such as WK FRS 102 Limited. Now, in terms of actually navigating around the document center, how you go saving documents into it and using our one-click portal, that will be our next webinar that's set up tomorrow morning. So if you're not signed up to that one, I know Evan's mentioned it first, but yeah, sign up to that one to know a bit more about how the document center works in terms of actually storing documents and sending them out to clients using the portal. But in terms of collaborating between your staff and your clients through Outlook, what I've got set up here is Outlook 2010. Now, it does work forward through every Outlook version all the way up to Outlook 365, which is what I expect a lot of the users on the call today are using. Now, what I've got there is just a few emails that have come into my inbox, and how it works is if I select any of these emails, for example, I'll select Jane Riddle here. What it does is it checks the email address, which in this instance is joemerrick@fr.com. What it does is it checks the central database for any contacts or clients that are associated with that particular email address, and it lists them in the bottom left-hand corner that we've got Mrs. Jane Riddle, we've got Mr. James Riddle, and then we've got that WK FRS 102 Limited. So clearly in the database, probably Jane and James are husband and wife. So any email that comes in from Jane, the system says, I expect you to need to file it under one of these three clients in this circumstance. Now, there's two contacts under there, Lloyds and Northeast Metropolitan. For example, there might be a prospect that she's related to that could list in there as well. For example, you can have a document center for contacts at the same time, so that when they become clients, you can just convert it across and all the documents stay there. Now, what the end user or the staff member would have to do if this email comes in is just to drag and drop the email over the relevant person, whether it's Jane or James or the limited company, and just drop it. So I'm going to drop this over James Riddle in this circumstance. I get a little warning here telling me that I've already filed it previously in previous demonstrations when I was coming out to client sites previously. But if I just choose file again in this circumstance for demo purposes, what I then get is my email filing a plugin where it asks me, where do I want to file it? Now, the file name is tax return info, which is the subject of the email. The contact is James Riddle, because that's who I dragged and dropped it over. And I could then choose the assignment and the type, so the relevant filing tags that are able to file documents or emails under at that point in time. If I was to click OK, and if I was to then go to James Riddle's client account, so if I find my client for James Riddle, or Riddles, I typed in there for some reason, and then go to the document center. Take a few seconds to open up his account. Go to document center. and then we would see there's that email tax return info that I filed today on the 16th of June for this particular client. So what you would actually have there is your staff member filing that email, and then you'd have full visibility across the practice to see that that email has come in from the client. And what then any staff member will be able to do is to double click on that email, and it would open the email up in their Outlook program to then hit reply, forward, see that email, any attachments that are relating to it as well. So it's just better visibility across the practice for all email captures that we've got there. Now, in terms of other areas that we've got here in terms of integration with Outlook, as I just showed there before, you can access it without leaving Outlook. You can do all your drag and dropping from in there, but there is also a dedicated button to send and file. So when you are drafting an email in Outlook, there is a button in there to actually send and file that email at the same time against the client record that it relates to. However, the next bit is relating to automatic email filing. So once you send and file that email to the client, and it files it under the CCH client record at the same time, you can have it set that it automatically files the reply in the same credentials that you filed the sent email. So in terms of the send and file function, if I just drop back into my virtual machine here, if I was to do a new email, you can see we've there got a nice little send and file option in here, which then will bring up the pop-up box and ask you where do you want to file it in CCH. Again, it would then give you a list of the clients that it expects you to want to send it to if you're doing it from within, Outlook. And then you've got the able to attach document, which would browse you through to CCH document management. Very different to attach file, which would take you to your existing network drives that you might use at the minute if you're not using document management. So that's one way of actually sending an email from within Outlook. I would actually always suggest that you start sending emails from within the client record, especially if you want to attach documents. The reason being, if I was to tick the box on the left-hand side and click email, it asks me if I want to zip them with a password-protected zip file, for a bit more security, trying to comply a bit more with GDPR. And then what it does is it would then automatically open it with the correct client email already populated into that box. So you're not picking the wrong James accidentally, which I'm sure it's happened in your practice previously. If you're doing it manually from Outlook, it will automatically pick the right one. Now, if you send in an email to someone who's got to a company which has got multiple directors, it will give you a pick list of which people you want to send it to. I'll just do that very quickly here just to demonstrate that. If I tick these 3 documents here and say I want to send them out to the client, click email, what you'll see, it gives me a list of all the people who are listed as directors or secretaries or any associations with their email address listed to it, and you could tick them and send it to multiple ones. Again, it's just trying to make sure that you're sending it to the right people rather than accidentally picking the wrong name from the pick list. Now, in terms of automatic filing, if you want to turn this on for yourself or your staff, it's on a user-by-user permission basis. You'd have to open up the Outlook program, go to the plugin in the bottom left-hand corner, and there's these little 2 cogs. Click the cogs, go to Options, and then Filing, and then this is where I would have File Email on Send turn on, because that brings up the pop-up box to file it whenever you send an email out to the client. And then you've got Automatically File Conversation Replies. These are the ones that I had ticked when I worked in practice myself, just to make sure that every single email I sent, a reply was then automatically filed into the system. Particularly if I was on holiday or was off sick, it would always make sure that that reply was then visible to the rest of the staff at the firm I worked in at the time. If you don't have that turned on, it would still mean that each staff member would have to file each individual email manually, rather than just the first one in a conversation that's relevant to be filed. So that would be my chosen options when setting up email filing. Just to make sure, I did a demonstration for a firm who's actually using the system, just a bit of a health check that we're offering at the minute for our clients. They just wondered why everything was grayed out. They couldn't make any of these changes. You've always got to make sure email folder monitoring is turned on before these are then available to tick. It's the first thing to be aware of when you're making these options. Just make sure enable folder monitoring is ticked and it makes the other ones available. Okay. So in terms of automatic filing and using the email function, hopefully that'll give you an idea of how we integrate with Microsoft products such as Outlook there to make sure you've got better staff and client visibility of emails in your CCH document management system. Now, the next element that we're going to look at is scanning documents into the CCH system, primarily from if you've got incoming post, but also if you've got a number of documents you want to get into the system at the same time. So looking at how we can get them in, but then as listed by the first bullet point there, how they're fully word searchable is in every single document that's stored in the system will be optical character recognition associated against that. Now that works for all the scan documents. Now, unfortunately, if it's a handwritten document, it's not going to be able to read that. There are limitations to it, but it just tries to make sure that every single time you add a scan document in, you're able to then search it through the search document content tab in the CCH document management area. The second bullet point there, in terms of CCH workflows closely aligned to our document management and tax products, enabling you to standardize processes around your firm, means that if you're using the scanning facility, you can scan, say, 10 pieces of incoming post at the same time, and then it would automatically notify the partner relating to those documents, or manager, based on the workflow that you've decided that those documents have come in and those need actioning. So utilizing the CCH workflow area was historically only really used for the compliance tools, making sure that you filed all your tax returns and accounts on time. But workflow is becoming more and more prevalent in the non-compliance area with practice management and document management, just to make sure that your internal processes are being followed, particularly around making sure that incoming posts doesn't get missed, but also making sure that engagement letters are being processed out on time, and make sure that you've got nice up-to-date ones there. Now, the third element we've got there in terms of KPI alert monitoring. This is an additional tool outside of document management, but it's a third-party tool that just sits next to our SQL database of CCH Central and can query any part of the database. So if you said, show me, email the partner of any particular clients whose engagement letters in the system are now 3 years out of date, it will do that for you rather than having to produce a report. And it will just be able to report by exception any kind of information, whether it's a compliance-based or, in this instance, document-based, that mean that you've got an internal reporting basis for your particular firm. Evan might be able to go into a bit more detail towards the end if any more questions are around in that. But if you've got any questions about KPI alert monitoring, your account manager will be able to give you a lot more detail around what its full capabilities are, and options that you've got for your firm in terms of implementing that. So I'm just going to jump into my my scan folder in CCH just to show you how you would scan incoming post, because I expect at the minute your internal process, if you're not using our document management system or scan profiler, is that you might open up the incoming post on reception, hand out the post to the relevant people who might need it, whether it be the partner or the manager. They would then decide to put it in maybe a compliance file, but then you've got not much visibility across the firm that document has been received. Whereas if you use our scan function, the receptionist or admin person on the desk can automatically file it straight into document management, and then, as I said, notify it to the partner or staff member that needs to see that. Now, you can have it so it directly links to your scanner or multifunction photocopy device, but obviously, as you can see from my webcam at the top, I am not in the office. I'm in my my partner's dressing room. Make sure I've got good Wi-Fi signal. So what I will have to do is browse in a particular document from my network drive. You can, if you wanted to, just photocopy or scan in 10 documents and save it in your desktop and upload it if you've not got a scanner attached. So you can use this kind of a workaround model to do that. Now, I'm just going to bring in a set of accounts in this circumstance just to show you what it looks like, rather than a piece of incoming post. But the idea is that the receptionist opens up all, say, 10 pieces of incoming post and puts it into one pile. They would then put it into the feeder tray of your scanner and click new in the top left hand corner, and it would feed in all those 10 documents in as if it was one document. What it's now doing is at the bottom is it's bringing them through as if I'd fed them into the system in one document, and it's just going to load them down my loading screen on the left hand side. Should take a few seconds to do that. It's probably quite a large set of accounts that I've brought in. Just having a good think. Now, our I say more long-standing use of document management might not be aware that this function is actually available with your current license. So even if you are using document management, probably think about looking at utilizing this process for managing your incoming post, just to make sure that you've got your internal processes correct. It's just having a little bit stuck on this one. Probably on the last page. There we go. Yeah. So what I've got here on the left-hand side, you can see I've got quite a large set of accounts coming through here. And how it works is if I select a page on the left-hand side, it then shows it on the screen on the right. Now, what you're able to do for these is if I select it, so they're going to show it on the right-hand side, I can rotate these right. So if it's a landscape piece of post, you can rotate it. Now, this third one here I've got, if it's a piece of marketing information, and it obviously doesn't need to be filed into the document management system, you can just select delete at the top, and that would then remove it from the list down the left-hand side. But the key part of this scan area is the fact that if this third piece of documentation here is a new piece of post that would need to be filed separately, we have the pair of scissors here which says split, and if I click that, it would separate it out as a new document. And you can put as many different splits in here as you like, as you would go through. Now, in terms of filing it into the system, there are two ways in which you would do it. In a previous demonstration, we had a question from an existing user saying that they use the profile in the bottom right-hand corner to file it. So what they would then do is change the name in the top left-hand corner to something like test 1 in this circumstance. Type properly, test 1, and I'll call this one test 2. Because you need to make sure you're giving these the correct names, otherwise they're just going to go into the system as a complete nonsense name. It needs to be filed using a correct and consistent naming structure. They would then go and file it in the bottom right corner down here using the client, assignment, job, and type, the same as you would do elsewhere, and then click upload. Now, personally to me, the way in which I like to do it is I like to click select all and then add, on the basis that what it does is it brings up the pop-up box as if you want to file the documents the same as what we saw for email. So it's just a consistent way in which you would file the documents into the system, rather than a slightly different way of doing it in the bottom right corner where you profile each individual document individually as you're going through. I would just like to split them, rename them, click the add button at the top, and then it would bring up the profiler box in the middle of the screen that we saw for email. Just taking a bit longer than it normally would for my machine today. It must be on the go slow today in rural East Anglian Wi-Fi. Just having to think about it. Making its way across. Always goes slower on these webinar demonstrations, no idea why. There we go. So there's the profiler box that I mentioned before. So we've got the rename ones here. So I'd always recommend you do it beforehand rather than them thinking, oh, what was that document? Then you would be able to choose which contact to client, assignment type, and click OK, it would file it. This is where you can have it so it automatically assigns the workflow of, for example, scan to partner, and then it would notify on one of your partner's home pages that a document has come in and it needs actioning. So they wouldn't have to go and physically hand it to the partner. It would automatically be on their particular home page. Okay, so that's the area of the scan system that I would recommend new and existing users have a look at and start testing. If you've not got your scanner in the new area where you're able to browse it in automatically, rather than having to save it to a file and upload it, just drop a call to our support team and they can get that link set up between our CCH system and your scanning device. Okay. Now, the next element we're going to look at is possibly, I would say, the most important part of any document management system, which is looking at the security of any documents that are saved in the system. So as we got there, it's a secure centralized storage, and the only way in which you can get into the document management system is through the front end of the CCH system. You can't get around the back to access any documents like you can with maybe some other slightly older document management systems. And the second bullet point there, secure logon. So every single user at the CCH system will have their own logon, hopefully with a password. We always recommend that every single user of the CCH system has a password. There are still loads of firms that go out there who just have their initials and then no password. I would always recommend we update that for our user base, just to make sure that people aren't able to log in as other people and do things they shouldn't do. The audit and history. So every single time you edit a document or delete it or add a document in, it gives it a little timestamp to say who did what to that document. So you've always got a nice little check to see what's happened to every single document. And one of the benefits as well is you can roll back to a previous version if someone's made any changes to a document that should have done. For example, when I worked in practice, it happened quite a few times where, for example, I'm not working in practice anymore, and probably because I'm not the greatest accountant in the world, but I might have made some changes to some working papers. Another staff member in my circumstance was able to roll that document back to a previous version and then make the correct changes to it if need be. There's the function of locking documents. So when a document is complete and maybe ready to go out for signing, you don't want to make any changes to it, you can have it so the workflow can automatically lock that document so people can't make any changes to it going forwards. Again, there are the security permissions that people can unlock the document if need be. And there is also the ability to manually lock it as well if you haven't got the workflow set up. And then lastly, again, really important, it's fully GDPR compliant. I mean, we as a document management system was fully compliant before the rules came in anyway. But again, if it's something which is key to your practice to make sure you are fully compliant with GDPR policies, if you were to take our document management system, our implementation consultants would make sure that the settings you've got in there make sure you fully comply with the relevant regulations that are in place for those laws. So in terms of looking at security that we've got there, I'll just jump into my client again, WK-FRS 102, just to highlight these areas. What we've got in the top right-hand corner are delete, destroy, and restore. So we've also got archive, but the system will automatically archive documents after a certain period of time based on how the settings are in the background. We've got delete, destroy, and restore. So I would always recommend that people have the ability to delete documents. In terms of every single user should be able to delete documents. That sounds really scary, but it's because delete doesn't actually mean delete. It means hide. For example, if I select this document here, bank reconciliation, and select delete, when I click yes, just watch that row where it says bank reconciliation. You'll see it puts a line through it very quickly and then removes it. Now, if I tick the box down here where it says show deleted archive documents, you can see that it's still there, because I would then have the ability to tick the box and restore. It just hides it. Now, the dangerous one we've got between there is destroy. If I was to tick the box and click destroy, it would completely delete or destroy that document out of the system, I should say. So the only way of getting that back is restoring the database from a previous backup. So that is the type of button that we would heavily task permission down that only certain people will be able to do. There's an example of the audit lock-in, sorry, the lock-in of a particular document. You see a colleague of mine, Lee Bennett, locked this on the 3rd of March at 3:41 and no seconds. So I actually wouldn't be able to tick that box and check it out in terms of being able to edit it. Again, we'll go through the facilities of being able to edit documents and add them in on our webinar tomorrow. But the ability to edit that document has now been turned off because it's got a padlock on it. Okay. In terms of being able to roll back documents, so if we're going back to a previous version, if I select this properties panel on the right-hand side, this is where you can see I've got the ability of versioning here. So I've got version number 2. If I click on version history, I would be able to right-click and revert to this version if need be. Okay, so what it would actually do is create version 3, so it never loses a version of that document going forwards. You've always got a history of that. So in terms of making sure that you're fully compliant, again, for GDPR, we've got a GDPR deletion date in here. But if a client was to leave, you can have it so it automatically populates that date in that box, so that it will automatically destroy all documents in the system after, say, 6, 12 months, whatever your internal policy is for your practice, to make sure that you're not only just removing your compliance information for your client, but also all the documents at the same time. Okay. So in terms of the 3 elements we've gone through today, I hope we've not taken up too much of your time. I'm going to pass back to Evan just to go through the last elements of the presentation.
I was going to say, just before you hand back, there's a question just asking if you can go on that screen you had just before where we're looking at the documents. There's a question asking the preview of the document. How did you get that on there?
Yeah, great question. So as default, I believe that it always comes through and looks like this. So again, I really like having the preview panel open. If you right click anywhere in this section, right click, you've got the ability to have show/hide preview. Click that and it will give you a preview of the document as you scroll through and select any of the documents. You're able to see them as you go through. If you do make that setting, that is a user by user preference, and I just make sure that once you've made that setting, just close that client's document center down and then reopen it. And what it would then do is then save that setting going forward for every client you open up.
Brilliant, thank you. And there was also just a follow-up one. So one follow-up one, and then we'll skip on. It's just asking on the versioning. So if I don't know, say you're up to version 3 or 4 of a document, and you then need to revert to version 2, what happens to the later ones, the 3 and 4?
Yeah, great question. So I'll just select one I've got here in terms of version 2 here. If I click version history, can you see I've got version 1 by me, version 2 by Lee Bennett. What I can do is I can click these blue hyperlinks and it would show me a read-only version of that document at that time. So I won't be able to change it, but what I can do is I can say, right, Lee's messed this up. He's made a nightmare of this particular document. I know Lee wouldn't do that very often, but let's say he has done. I can right-click and revert to this version. And what it actually does in that circumstance is it makes it version 3. See, I've now got version 3, so you still maintain the previous versions in between that you can still edit. Now, in this circumstance, let's say my manager had gone, Nick, what are you talking about? Lee had done it perfectly. They would then be able to right-click and revert to this version, and then it makes that version 4. So you still maintain all that. It turns a bit like version wars. It still updates it. But then on the left-hand side, you would then effectively it'd be version 4, but it would be the same as what version 2 was previously. I mean, I probably butchered that explanation, but it just means that you never lose any savings of the work once you've checked it back in at that point in time.
Thank you. And one question just come in from Keen. Does document management system come separate to CCH, as we have CCH Central but don't appear to have this functionality?
Yeah, so I'll just go to a little icon that I've got on screen here in terms of explaining how CCH Central is put together. It is a modular product, so I imagine you might have CCH Central with some of the compliance products such as accounts production and tax. Document management is a separate license, but because obviously it's an integrated program within the single SQL database, if you were to take document management, it would have integration elements such as if you were in accounts production, you'd be able to save accounts directly into document management rather than exporting it and importing it. So yes, if you've not got the document management option in the client record, for example here, unfortunately I don't think you have this document center license at the minute. That would be an option for you to then contact your account manager. If you don't know who your account manager is, just drop a comment into this message box here, and we can inform you of who that is and make sure they get in contact with you.
Okay, there's some others coming in. I think what we'll do, Nick, we'll move on, and then because we've got a section for questions at the end, yep. So I can pick up any extras which come up just then.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, you want to share your screen Evan, for the final bit?
There we go. Nick, are you able to see that?
Yes, I can. I can see the blue. Yeah, I can see the blue protecting your security. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Okay, so just briefly, with any kind of system, it's a question of how valuable is it to you or not. So some things just to think about purely on the internal side. So obviously, we mentioned that tomorrow we'll be looking at collaborating with your clients, and later on we'll be looking at some other aspects as well. So purely from an internal perspective, just 4 things to think about. So particularly while people are working remotely, but not necessarily only working remotely, can also be when you're in office. How quickly can your team access the information they need? How much are you paying to keep physical documents? I know when I worked in town, for us it was a really quick calculation to make. We were paying ridiculous money in SW1, and so actually a DM system saved us a lot of money, where we could then get rid of filing cabinets and put desks in and people. So something else from an ease of use. So how easily, when you're thinking about a document management system, lots of systems will store documents, but how easily can you actually manage your Word and Excel documents from actually within Excel or from within Word? So what's the integration like with a DM system? And first thing here, the last thing here is it's intangible, isn't it? But how do you value the reputation that you have with your own clients for always being right? So, as Nick was showing, we've got audit trails around documents with KPIs. You're never going to miss a deadline around anything that's outstanding there. So difficult to try and value, but personally I'd say that that's invaluable. All right, a couple of questions. So some more have come in. So one here, you said that document management works with Office 365. Does this include 64-bit Office? Yes, that does. Scan, how much is a scan function? Okay, well, it comes in 2 parts, doesn't it, Nick? So there's the scan module, which Nick showed within Central. That's cheap. That's something like £200 a year for your whole practice. But then there's also Scan Profiler. So Scan Profiler is a thing where if you've got a multifunction device, you can be putting your documents in, you scan them in there, and then they just appear in Central. That's even cheaper. That's free. So if you buy Scan module, then you get Scan Profiler with that automatically. What happens if an email is sent but not filed? How will I know it wasn't filed? Nick, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I unfortunately didn't show you before, I don't know if Evan, you've got your email open for connected to your virtual machine. What you get is a little tick in a box next to each email that tells you whether it's been filed actually on the preview panel of Outlook. It also works really well that if 3 people in your practice get sent the same email, if one person files it, it tells the other 2 people that received that email that it's already been filed. It also tells them on the preview panel of that actual email where it's been filed and who filed it. So we do try and give you as much information within Outlook rather than having to go into Central to get that information.
Cool. And I guess the other thing there, Nick, is that if, because you can set watch folders as well, can't you? So if an email is sent but not filed, when you open up Outlook, it can actually just prompt and say there are these emails which have been sent. Maybe you sent them from your phone or from webmail or something like that. Outlook can pick that up, can't it?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Evan. I would say when I worked in practice, that was very useful when I was sending things from my phone. That it would then bring up the profile and ask me where do I want to send them in CCH once I came back into the office.
Cool. Another one here, is Scan based on the user license? Yes, so what happens is on that screen that Nick was showing on that scan, on that actual scan screen within CCH Central, it's based on the number of people who are concurrently using that screen. So you could have a practice of 400 people, and if you've only got 2 people that need to be in that scan screen at once, then it's only 2 licenses that you're going to need there. Got a question here from Paul. We use document management, it's great. The only thing that would make it better, creating client engagement documents. Yes, that's a good point. So client engagement documents, letters of engagement, is something which actually I've got some good news for you, Paul. What you'll find when you take the 2020.2 release, if you look carefully in the release notes, you'll see there's a whole load of preparatory stuff in there. So there'll actually be some new document types in the libraries around letter of engagement. So this is something which actually from July, I've got a couple of early adopter sites who are going to be testing this out for us. If that's something that you'd like to get involved with, just let me know, and absolutely we can do that. Kevin, can I have details of your scan to partners workflow? Yeah, absolutely. Can the folders be more flexible? So we're able to create a folder at the client level rather than at the global level. Yes, so with when you're filing in document management, you're not actually filing to a physical folder structure. It's all done around metadata, so like virtual folders. What we can do around that is perhaps if you drop me an email, or actually we'll have your email address on here. We'll catch up with you separately about that. I think that's all of the questions. Okay, so what next? Well, if you're looking for support, contact support. If you're after training, there's the e-learning available in there. If you don't have document management and you'd like to find out a bit more about it and some pricing, there's an email address there, or your account manager, or if you're brand new, just give us a call or drop an email in there. Okay, and so as we said, tomorrow we're looking at collaborating with your clients using document management and CCH OneClick together. On 1st of July, we'll show you how to use document management to help manage your own internal HR function. And in between, we've got an interesting session. So we were talking with some people from Accounting Web a couple of weeks ago. They said they've seen a huge increase in people searching for information relating to remote working, especially things around mental health, keeping teams motivated, and ensuring that you're staying efficient. And these things are actually now in their top 5 across everything that's being searched for. So we're doing a session on there on the 25th. There will be no mention of any of our products at all. It's purely going to be some thought leadership and some practical tips that you can put in place to help keep your business and the people working in your teams working at their best. So stuff that we're going to share that we've been doing. All right, so we are done. So thank you very much. If you're able to join us tomorrow, please do. Nick and I, we're both on LinkedIn. Feel free to find us and connect with us on there. We'll sign off for now. What we'll do is we'll leave the webinar running just for a few minutes, just so you can add in any additional questions, and then we'll send out the questions and the answers to everyone. So thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to join us this morning. Hope that you found it useful, and have a great rest of the day.